Well, good news, Holden's player has agreed to play Rampant until the end of the Brindle arc. Not sure yet if he is going to bring back Holden via RHOD, which I did inform him is possible, or insist creating a new character. He seems to be okay with the idea of letting him come back, though. It's a good thing his character died now that they have a cleric who has access to RHOD. The final showdown. I'm sure you've been waiting for this entry. We finally got around to holding the final session for Brindle. Nox's usual player couldn't make it, Holden/Rampant's player could only stay till noon, and the rest had to leave by around 3 p.m., so I asked my players to come really early. Unfortunately, Rampant's player arrived early. It took the rest a while to arrive. We were only able to start at 10:30 a.m. The party hurries toward Cathedral Square only to find Jarmuth being dragged into the safety of the cathedral. Captain Ulverth hurries toward the PCs, telling them that Jarmuth was taken down by a sniper. Seeing that Brindle is in grave danger, Rampant tells the others that Kenneth designed him with a one-time use program that greatly increases his abilities, but only lasts for an hour. He activates this program and begins speaking in Autobot lines. Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. They enter the cathedral to check on him and run into Tridera, who is tending her fallen lover. As much as she loves Jarmuth, she isn't willing to use up her spells when she knows that they might be needed later. Linny volunteers her one prepared lesser restoration and brings Jarmuth back to 4 strength. Jarmuth orders Captain Ulverth to take command since he doesn't want Lady Call giving orders. He then orders the PCs to look for the sniper. The PCs begin by sending Rampant into the area where soldiers had fallen to the sniper. Almost immediately Scother takes a shot and scores a critical hit against Rampant. His fortification doesn't protect him and he instead takes a full 20+ critical sneak attack. Nox is able to spot Scother as he takes his snipe hide check and quickly tries to enter the coffin maker's shop. Nox enters the back door and begins sneaking in extremely well, while the rest of the party gathers around the door outside. As Nox explores the interior, he opens a door that creaks noisily, alerting the invisible Kulkurzul War Adept hiding in the stairwell. However, Nox's hide checks are so high that no matter how high the War Adept rolls, he is unable to spot Nox. Nox spots into the stairwell and is able to discern the vague outline of an invisible creature. Taking his survival pouch, he rips out a campfire, again, and throws it at the War Adept. He hits, dealing a full 6 fire damage to the War Adept, who promptly swears and runs up to the 2nd floor. The party rushes into the door while Nox follows the still invisible War Adept up the stairs. When Nox gets up to the 2nd floor, he opens the door to the supply storage room only to find a fiendish dire wolf snarling at him. He quickly backs away and enters the room on the other side of the stairwell to avoid getting pinned down by the wolf. The other party members pound their way up the staircase. Leica immediately steps in front of the wolf, closely followed by Rampant. Linny tries to run past the wolf, but in the process gets AO'd. The beast grabs her leg and shakes it, dealing a massive 30 damage, but Linny is actually able to succeed on the opposed trip attempt. Kikini remains on the ground floor, keeping watch in case someone comes in the front door. Nox takes a shot with his crossbow at the dire wolf through the space between Leica's legs, taking off almost 3/4 of the wolf's HP. Rampant steps in and then decapitates it, spraying Leica with black blood. "You're going to have to polish my armor," Leica tells Rampant. "Freedom is the right of all sentient beings," replies the Warforged. Leica spots someone hiding behind some boxes in the storeroom, a hobgoblin. Rampant stomps all the way up to the hobgoblin, taking a double move, and stopping short of attacking him. "Would you like to butt heads with me?" The hobgoblin emerges from his hiding place and attempts to bash Rampant with Death Mark, but misses spectacularly. Linny follows into the room while Leica attempts to close in with the hobgoblin swordsage. With the stairs clear, Kikini decides to head up to the stairwell and try to help the others on the 2nd floor. Nox, in the meantime, investigates the back rooms to see if there is anything else. He notices that the doors in the bedroom are curiously. He spots the windows in the bedroom and decides to try investigating it. Rampant then roars, "This hobgoblin is not our sniper." Right at that moment, the War Adept reveals himself and casts Shatterfloor on the rickety floorboards, dropping Rampant and Leica. Leica fails her save to grasp onto the vertical wall below her, onto the 1st floor. Rampant's player attempts something so awesome that I let slide at the cost of 1 action point. Initiate a grapple with the swordsage and pull him to the ground with him. He makes the touch attack and succeeds in his grapple attempt, pulling the hobgoblin down. They crash into the coffin display on the 1st floor. Leica falls prone onto the ground, only to see none other than Skother suddenly materialize over her with his poisoned blade at the ready. He performs a strength-draining strike on Leica, his blade pulsing with black energy in the gloom. Leica rolls natural ones versus both the strength-draining strike and the poison. Her strength instantly drops from 18 to 8. Rampant then attempts to bash the grappled hobgoblin's face in with his slam, headbutt, even using Emerald Razor in a full power attack, but misses. Leica, still ever sarcastic, quips, "My hope. It is draining away faster than my strength." Linny takes a shot at the war adept, who now has a spectacular bird's-eye view of the desperate fight below, blasting him with Scorching Ray. Nox attempts to jump across the gap using a rope, but hearing the mess going on, he decides to crash through one of the ground floor windows into the display room. Kikini rushes to Leica's assistance, while Leica weakly tumbles away from Skother to take her position beside the Psion. The war adept drops a glitter dust on Kikini and Leica, but both make their saves. Skother uses Cloak of Deception and materializes behind Kikini, his blade firmly planted in her back. Half of her HP is gone instantly. All this time, Rampant and the Hobgoblin are wrestling in a stalemate. Although Rampant's grip is overpowering, he keeps failing to injure the Hobgoblin except for one landed punch. Linny decides to try to help Kikini by using her Rod of Viscid Globs at Skother. She hits and Skother fails his save. Nox attempts a crazy stunt with the grappling hook and tries to throw it at the war adept to pull it down, but it is quickly found lacking as an improvised weapon and simply fails to hit. Kikini pulls back from the now stuck Skother. OOC the player agonizes over which of her powers to use. She's down to her last use no matter what she does, and decides she wants to end the battle quickly and increase her chances of taking Skother out by using her highest save viable power, Death Urge. Skother rolls a 3, even with his impressive +14 modifier, he fails to make the save. Leica tries to help Skother along, but her awful attack rolls and modifiers fail to do anything, and to add even more injury to injury, the war adept drops a power word, Weaken, on Leica. 2 points of strength drain. Skother stabs himself, leaving him with very little HP. Rampant, in the meantime, caves in the Hobgoblin Swordsage's head with Emerald Razor plus full power attack, while Linny and Nox finish off the war adept. Skother is unable to break free of the goo, and is finally finished off by Linny's Scorching Ray. The party collects their loot and moves back to Cathedral Square, with Rampant toting the corpses of Skother and the war adept. The party reports to Captain Ulverth, who commends them on a job well done. Not long afterward, Killier and the hunters land their owls close by. Killier reports that the Red Hand is making a final push on Cathedral Square, and that he expects them to arrive in about 10 minutes. Hearing this, Jarmuth gets up and staggers to the Cathedral Square to show that he's still up and about, and delivers an inspiring, albeit recycled speech. Rampant continues this by saying, "Our chance of success is very slim, but we can make it happen because we are heroes and everyone that has fought here is a hero." Tridera takes Kikini aside, saying that she senses Kikini is extremely fatigued. Kikini says she just wants some tea, but Tridera forces her on her knees and lays her hands on the Psion's head. She casts Dwemer of Transference and sacrifices enough of her spells to bring Kikini up to 26 pp, +1 from the Cognizance Crystal she has. Tridera uses up the 2 lesser restorations to bring Leica back up to 16 strength. She can't get the 2 strength drain from the power word Weaken back yet. While we have lunch, the party then goes about the very tedious and hassled process of procuring potions and scrolls from the 5000 GP item pool given to them by the merchants. Leica, Bear's Endurance, Bull's Strength, Giralon's Blessing, and Dragonskin, Shield of Faith. She had a bunch of spare +1 short swords, so she put those to good use with her extra arms. Rampant, Shield of Faith. Nox, Cat's Grace. Finally, they had Immerstal cast Haste on the PCs. Killier, Trellera, and the elves took up their positions on a grandstand in the corner of the Cathedral Square. Tridera stood by the cathedral's stairs with Narki, Rigan, Tiani and Captain Ulverth. Rampant, Leica, and Linny stood in front of them, while Nox, Kikini and Jones took up sniper positions on the cathedral spires. Nox's and Kikini's player help each other run Killier, Trellera, and the elves, while Linny's player runs Rampant and the lions. Kikini's player also runs Tridera and Captain Ulverth. Leica's player has a handful enough with her oodles of attacks. Everyone nervously awaits the coming of the horde. As they wait, the rhythmic beating of swords on shields accompanied by goblin chants fills the air. The blaring of dragon bone horns rises above the din. The horde charges the barricades surrounding the cathedral square, and the assembled soldiers do their best to fight off the oncoming tide. However, the sound of soldiers screaming as they are flung through the air fills the cathedral square. Immediately afterward, a fireball shoots out of the melee and strikes the holy symbol of Dol Ara on top of the cathedral, setting it on fire. The wicked red-orange light casts dancing shadows all across the square. Two Skull Crusher ogres lead the charge, one of them carrying an enormous halberd while the other wields a long sword and an axe. Between them are two muscular, white-scaled dragon spawn wielding spiked chains white spawn berserkers mounted on red spawn fire belchers. Finally, mounted on an enormous rage drake, Wormlord Karn makes his entrance. He is clad in red full plate, has his long hair in long, tight dreadlocks woven into a very long braid, and an enormous jagged great sword. The sword's steel is a deep purple, and the blood that sticks to it seems to be rising instead of dripping off. Livid with rage, Karn orders the charge. Before they are even able to move, Leica charges. She savagely slashes at the halberd-toting ogre, taking off almost a third of its HP before it's able to do anything. Killier, Nox, and Immerstal shoot him as well, while Captain Ulverth charges on his horse. The halberd ogre is brought down to extremely low HP before it is able to even do anything, while Karn, on his turn, vanishes with invisibility. Tridera and the lions charge the second ogre, while Kikini drops an electric energy ball on the berserkers. Linny casts Healing Circle, giving the party and their allies a multiple-use healing source. Karn reappears in his mega-buffed form, 12 feet tall with a chromatic pentagram halo, long, black horns, pitch-black eyes, and dragon mark glyphs floating all over him, behind Ulverth and stabs him with his great sword. The blood slick on the sword seems to get sucked into the hilt, after which the spikes on the sword flare out. Ulverth cries in agony. Karn, one of the berserkers and the rage drake close in on Ulverth, Rampant and Leica, while the other berserker uses his mount to spew artillery fire at Linny and the lions. The lions close around the second Skull Crusher, while the elves open fire on the halberd-wielding Skull Crusher. Linny tries to dispel Karn, but he is able to counterspell it with his Divine Defiance feat. The invisible Ulwy casts haste on her party, while Karn slashes Ulverth, tearing him down from his horse. The captain was left at -1, so Karn began to concentrate on Tridera and Rampant. The Rage Drake tries to maul Leica, but is unable to hit her with its bite due to her high AC. Rampant tries to use Charging Minotaur on one of the Fire Belchers to push it into the Rage Drake's space, but he's unable to overpower the massive beast. The melee continues for a round before Kikini is no longer able to fire an energy ball due to the muddled-up battle lines, but the elves and Immerstal are able to continue supporting fire. Amazingly, despite the -4 penalty for shooting into melee, the elves roll incredibly high and are able to score successive hits on the ogres and on Karn. Leica breaks invisibility and starts using Thunderstrike on Tridera, then Leica. Rampant slashes Karn and then activates his flesh-grinding greatsword, painfully wounding him. Karn angrily raises his own weapon and executes Divine Surge on Rampant, practically melting him in half at the waist. With Rampant dead, Linny angrily attempts a second Dispel magic on Karn and Karn rolls a natural 1 on his counterspell. His buffs shatter one after another. The Rage Drake makes a beeline for Linny and tears her apart like it would a rag doll. The Fire Belchers eventually fall to Leica's blades and the lions attacks, while the archers take down both ogres. One of the ogres is able to trip Tiani, but he doesn't do enough damage to kill her. With only the berserkers, the Rage Drake and Karn left, the lions and the snipers concentrate their fire on one of the berserkers while Karn attacks Tridera. Karn continues taking damage from Rampant's still grinding greatsword, but he keeps fighting on. Arrows bring down the last of the berserkers after the lions kill the other one. Leica shreds Ulwy to pieces, dealing over 40 damage with her second full attack. Immerstal gets the killing shot on Karn, blasting clean through him with his magic missiles. The lions and Tridera get in some hits on the Rage Drake, until a solid headshot from Nox kills it. Immerstal fireballs the Rage Drake's corpse for good measure. We end the session there. Casualties: Rampant, Linny, severely injured, CPT Ulverth. Wormlord Karn himself stands up, clutching his chest. With a grin on his face, he roars. It's far from over. Kikini orders the elves to open fire. Karn gets turned into a pincushion. A beam of brilliant light shoots out of the dead Wormlord's eyes and mouth, straight up into the midnight sky. His body then dissolves into a pile of black goo. The remaining hobgoblins run for their lives as the horde breaks apart. The Red Hand has been defeated. Brindal is saved. Jarmoth tells the PCs to take the rest that they've earned. After taking the ruined bodies of Linny and Holden into the cathedral, they loot the bodies of Karn and Ulwy. Day 49, 3 Ran 998 YK, 7 AM. The PCs wake up at the Stone Wyvern Inn, Sans Wyvern, and are greeted by Delorazan and Captain Sorina, who both survived the battle albeit with heavy injuries. Delora reports that she actually took the Wyvern out for a spin during the battle, although she had a bad fall. The Wyvern survived without much problems and was waiting outside. Sorina then tells the PCs that Jarmoth was waiting for them at Brindal Keep, saying he has a message that he wanted them to hear personally. It's far from over. At Brindal Keep, Jarmoth introduces the PCs to Sheen, a changeling spy who was able to infiltrate Karn's camp. She bluntly tells the PCs the problem: the hobgoblin horde was only the advance guard. Much swearing all around. She informs them that the High Wormlord, Azar Kull, is summoning an army of devils from the plane of Shaveroth, and that if that gets through, there'll be not enough military power in the 5 nations to stop them. She explains the planar orrery that Azar Kull is using to realign the planes. The PCs wonder about how this army of devils is related to Tiamat, but Sheen can't answer that question. All she knows is that the Wormsmokes are already crawling with devils and that when she tried to infiltrate the fane of Tiamat itself, Azar Kull's Irinies chased her away. Sheen marks the location of the fane on the PC's map. The PCs turn to leave, but a soldier in a battered tabard enters. He says that he has a message for Sheen and approaches her and subsequently stabs her in the throat with a short sword, saying, "High Wormlord Azar Kull and Grand Talon Indravanyugna would like to say that's enough." The soldier then jumps into the shadow of Jarmoth's desk and vanishes. Gathering the last of her strength, Sheen manages to write a few words in her own blood: "Beware Azar Kull's fa." The last word is scrawled out into a line, as Sheen goes limp and dies. Shaken, Jarmoth tells the PCs that they should go and investigate the Wormsmokes at once, or else all the sacrifices will be in vain. He could not, however, offer any solutions to the PCs' predicament. They re 2 men down. The PCs leave Brindal Keep and encounter a carpenter, part of the rebuilding effort, passing by. The carpenter drops a crumpled piece of paper and nods at the PCs, and goes on his way. The message reads, "I have a gift for you. See me. Lady Call." The PCs decide that it might not be a good idea to turn down the gift, so they proceed to Call Manor. When they get there, the guards usher the PCs into a large, plush audience room. Lady Call soon enters with a long, thin casket. She says that before she shows them what's in the case, the PCs have to agree that they wouldn't be telling Jarmoth anything about this. Nox tries to convince her to reveal something more by bluffing, but doesn't get any results. He then has her put it into writing first. Lady Call agrees. She goes on saying that Jarmoth is a small man in the greater scheme of things and as such wouldn't understand. She opens her case to reveal the contents: a silk-wrapped rod on a cushion, a candle of invocation tied to lawful good. The PCs ask what she wants in return. Lady Call furnishes them with a contract that says, "We, underscore 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 underscore, hereby receive the payment of 1 candle of invocation from Lady Verisa Ir Call in exchange for any future service that she might require. In the event that we do not perform the duty she requires, we grant her the lawful duty to execute the appropriate punishment in whatever measure she might deem necessary." Signed. Nox tells the others that he's got a lot of experience with contracts, and as such knows when to be wary. However, in their desperation, the group decides to sign it. Lady Call smiles, saying she knew that the PCs would be sensible. She hands them the case and says that she has another gift. Emerstal enters, muttering to himself. "Mr. Emerstal here can bring you most of the way. Look, Lady Call, I don't You don't have any more words to say, Emerstal." The wizard throws his hands up and sighs. "Fine. I have enough preparations of the teleport spell to bring all of you as far as Drellin's Ferry. I am not going to risk teleporting straight to the fane. If we encounter a mishap, we might just end up getting torn apart by fiends." Lady Call nods. The wizard continues, "I suggest you pick up provisions for the Wormsmokes. You do know what the Wormsmokes are like, don't you?" The PCs stare at each other for a while, but Linny tells them, the Wormsmokes are a desolate volcanic region to the west of the Elser Vale region. Emerstal nods, but continues to explain that small Furnia, elemental plane of fire, manifest zones wink in and out of existence throughout the wormsmokes, usually coinciding with areas of unnaturally high volcanic activity. The manifest zones are even hotter than the rest of the Badlands, and sometimes storms that rain fire appear in the skies over these zones. The PCs also have to bring their own food and water. The PCs discuss their provisions and determine that they wouldn't need to bring so much due to their spells and magic items. Emerstal tells them to visit him after they get their friends back so they can begin the teleportation relay. Credits to Eldariel for the idea, by the way. The PCs discreetly return to the cathedral, where Tridera has preserved the scorched corpse of Holden and what's left of Linny with gentle repose. Kikini presents the candle to her. Tridera, bemused, asks where they got it, but the PCs say nothing. The cleric decides it doesn't matter, sends out the other acolytes, and sets up the summoning. A stark white light washes out the windows of the cathedral, and a brief but violent quake follows. The gate opens above the altar, and a terrifying vision of celestial glory descends, 6 wings covered in eyes, metallic skin, opalescent eyes, and snow-white hair upon which verses of Holy Writ flow in elegant script a solar. An enormous fiery greatsword whirls about around it. No, I'm not a fan of the bald angels in the nor the faceless angels in 4E. Ye shall name these elves, mortals, it calls out in a voice that sounds like both the crashing of waves and the booming of thunder. And the reason thou calleth me from my battle eternal. The PCs made a big mistake, they forgot to figure out what to say. Tridera fills in for them. These champions of righteousness have fallen in service of their gods, but their quest is not yet complete. The solar gestures with its hands, and the bodies of Holden and Linny begin to reform and heal. Arise, ye champions. Ye shall yet struggle, and struggle mightily, for thy great enemy yet stands. The bodies of Holden and Linny rise up into the air, and the solar exhales upon them. Bluish-white energy glows softly on their wounds, and their flesh begins to knit. Broken bones snap back into place. Their eyes open, glowing fiercely with the same blue-white light, and their mouths open in an incessant stream of words in multiple languages. The tongues cease, and then the two of them speak once more, along with the solar, in the solar's voice. Ye shall yet struggle, and struggle mightily, for thy great enemy yet stands. I take my leave of thee. The fabric of the plains distorts once more, and the solar vanishes with a thunderous bang. That was awesome, says Leica. The ruins of Drellin's Ferry. The PCs do some retroactive shopping and get the donations from Jarmoth. Emerstal tells the PCs that Drellin's Ferry is the furthest he can take them, as he grew up there. He teleports the PCs to the burnt-out husk of a town that is Drellin's Ferry. Emerstal laments the fate of his hometown, then excuses himself, teleporting back to Brindal. The scene is apocalyptic. The town had been put to the torch as the PCs had seen much earlier, and now the wind howls through the ruins. However, the eerie calm is shattered by the sound of arguing deep voices speaking in giant, and 2 human-like voices. The argument escalates into a shouting match, followed by 2 screams that seem to be approaching them. The PCs hide in the trees along the path. A Kalishtar and a Wharf Org covered with crystals run toward the PCs, with 4 Skull Crusher ogres, a Hobgoblin Dirgedancer and 2 White Spawn Berserkers hot on their trial. The PCs leap out of the trees. Kikini drops an energy ball on the monsters, and Leica makes a beeline for the ogres. Unfortunately, nobody else is able to match her speed because of the trees. She's stuck in the middle of the bad guys, alone. Every single monster attacks her, thrashing her down to -2 HP in the course of 1 round from full HP. That's exactly 100 damage. I rolled really lucky on the attack rolls. Leica stabilizes herself with an action point. The PCs immediately try to rush to Leica's rescue, with Holden and Kikini leading the charge. Nox attempts to sneak attack one of the Berserkers with a scroll of Ice Lance and crits, but unfortunately it makes its save and doesn't get stunned, and thanks to uncanny dodge is unaffected by sneak attack. The Kalishtar and the Psyforged thank the PCs and try to fight back. The Psyforged charges up his deep crystal bastard sword while the Kalishtar reveals something interesting. Concealed under his sleeve is a mechanical arm much like a Warforged. He tells the PCs to hold the monsters off as he begins to infuse his arm. The NPCs' efforts aren't necessary. The remaining PCs finish them off in short order, except for the Dirgedancer, who is left at 0 HP. The Kalishtar introduces himself as Tharkad, a wandering Shinnok artificer looking for a way back to Sharn. He doesn't know what's been happening in Elser Vale, and says that he and his companion Synapse came from Dargyuan. The PCs break the news, and Tharkad simply tells his friend flatly, "Told you we were going the wrong way." Tharkad and Synapse thank the PCs profusely, but then Tharkad notices the red dragon horn that Kikini is carrying, saying that if she had killed a dragon, part of its spirit might have fractured off and trapped in the horn. Tharkad's hypothesis is further strengthened by Kikini's explanation of how they took down the dragon. Her ego whip, which damaged the dragon's charisma enough to shut down his spell casting, could have forced more than a small bit of the dragon's personality into dormancy. Its death would have then released the sealed part, which would escape into any little remainder of the dragon's body, in this case, its horn. Tharkad says that he could craft the horn of Abathriox into a weapon if the PCs have a Sybaris dragon's heart to act as a focus for Kikini's quarry spirit. Kikini gladly lets him do so, as she'd been looking for a way to use the horn. She also tells him about the quarry embedded components she salvaged from Ulwy's backpack. While she has her surgery, Holden attempts to do a Jack Bauer on the Dirge dancer. Nox, being a man of the appropriate profession, aids him. Unfortunately, she knows nothing about the current state of the Red Hand and if there are any remaining camps along the Dawn Way. Nox coup de graces her. The party finishes early and lets Kikini know they're going to go ahead to Vroth Keep to scout. Kikini waves them on, and surprisingly enough gets there before they do thanks to Shinnok teleport. The PCs then strike out for the Wormsmokes. Emerstal was not kidding. An hour into the foothills of the Wormsmokes, the PCs are attacked by a spell-warped dragon in a canyon. Linny pulls out her lore, as usual, figuring that this monster is of the spell-warped variety and as such gets stronger when spells bounce off its SR. A brief discussion over the monster's lame name comes up. Is it a dragon? A dragonai? The party decides to think of a new name for it. Leica advances again, making a jump check high enough to clear 40 feet of rubble along the canyon floor. Much snickering about the effeminate nature of the name comes to a sudden halt when the dragon pounces on Leica. Holden drops his maul, moves a bit forward and tries out his bow. Once the beast drops down beside Leica, however, he decides to just go in for the kill. Kikini offers to toss Holden. The dwarf grumbles, saying that he'd rather walk, but the opportunity is too good to pass up, as he'd have to double back to pick up his maul. Kikini throws Holden at the dragon, busting it up pretty badly, and then throws his weapon after him, barely missing him. Holden falls prone in the monster's space, and then dispatches it with a solid critical Elder Mountain Hammer punch with his gauntlet. Kikini, so, what do we call the dragon? Nox dead. The PCs then journey forth, but stop at the edge of a particularly large Furnia manifest zone. No way they're camping in that hellish area overnight. The players spend the rest of the session retroactively buying gear since we discovered how much money they actually had, about 13 KGP. Session 18. Hack and slash session this time. The Wormsmokes were rightly billed as a dangerous place, and one does not simply walk into mortar. Journey through the Wormsmokes continued. The PCs get up on the morning of day 50 after camping on the edge of the Furnia manifest zone. They drink their potions of endure elements and set out on their way. It's not long before they encounter a group of fiendish enemies. A certain Shinnok railgun. The PCs arrive in the center of a Furnia manifest zone in the middle of active volcanic scabland and spot an ominous reddish glow in the distance crossing the road. Nox takes another potion of invisibility and sneaks ahead to investigate. Nox's rolls are really high, and the fiends don't even hear him as he approaches them from the volcanic scab rock. He goes back to the party and describes the appearance of the fiends about as tall as a man, hunched over and heavily built, with glowing red eyes, shredded, useless wings, long writhing beards, and upward curving horns. The three of them wield massive, saw-toothed glaives. Linny identifies them as Barbazu. Nox, still invisible, climbs up the scab basalt along the other side of the road and takes up a sniping position. Before he does so, he empties his pack of all his scrolls, spreading them out all over the ground. He then takes his shot, severely injuring one of the devils. The other PCs attempt to blitz the Barbazu and catch them off guard, but the plan backfires. The devils hear them coming. Kikini takes the high ground on top of the basalt scab along with Linny. Leica runs along the path instead. Two of the devils teleport to confront Kikini while the third teleports into Leica's path. Although Linny was able to identify their weaknesses and defenses as devils, she didn't roll high enough to determine their exact abilities. The devil taunts Leica, saying that the strong faith of purified like her make their souls good eating. Leica replies, "My blades taste good too." Holden moves too slowly to help Kikini, so Kikini once more throws Holden at one of the Barbazu using telekinetic thrust. Linny fires off a sound burst on the two devils, but it barely grazes them. Kikini tries to back away, but due to their teleportation and reach weapons, the devils are too hard to shake. Nox takes another shot at the already bleeding devil, which Holden dispatches with his maul. The remaining devil pursuing Kikini bites into its finger, saying it's not that easy to kill them, and summons another Barbazu. Much swearing around the table. Linny keeps up her blasting while Laika tears into the devil that accosted her. The badly injured devil takes a step back, bites into its arm and scatters blood all over the ground. The black blood crawls around the warblade and begins coalescing into a dozen lemurs all around Laika. More swearing. Linny identifies the lemurs as entry-level devils, and Kikini's player says, so they're call center agents. I reply, if you think in terms of infernal bureaucracy, I don't think the truth would be very far from that. Kikini energy pushes the two devils near her into each other, but the recently summoned one teleports to Linny in the back, slashing Linny with a devastating critical hit. Nox drops a black tentacles centered on Laika, disabling the lemurs and Laika. Ironically, the devil with 1 HP gets away. More snickering about how Laika and her players' characters are always in compromising situations grappled by tentacles and surrounded by devils. Eventually, Laika gets out of the tentacles, and Kikini pulls her out by throwing her at one of the other devils. Holden finishes off the last Barbazu. The tentacles crush the remaining lemurs into gruesome black mush, and the PCs press on. The road snakes through deeply fissured ground with a lot of rock spires scattered about. The spires make great roosts for wyverns, and a pair are nesting in this area. Nox once more drinks a potion of invisibility, getting close. He immediately expresses interest in retrieving the wyvern stings for use as poison, and tries to snipe one. He damages the wyvern, which immediately attacks Laika. Again she's always in front. The wyvern successfully grabs Laika and attempts to pull her up, but she's able to break free. Kikini once more flings her favorite dwarven projectile, crushing the wyvern's ribcage. The wyvern bleeds to death from Nox's shot. The second wyvern buzzes Linny, stinging her, but she makes her save. She tries to back away while Holden and Laika try to hit the wyvern, Nox scoring a sneak by using Deadeye Shot, but the dragon thrashes Linny down to 5 HP. The PCs take down the wyvern and continue on their journey. They later encounter a flame storm, but they're able to find cover in time under a rock shelf. They continue marching for 4 more hours than they usually do in a day, and fatigue begins setting in. Ironically, while Laika fails 2 checks, Holden fails 1 and Nox fails all 4 forced march checks, Linny gets fine well enough. They make camp, scarcely a day's march away from the Fane. They at last come to a place where the ground drops away dramatically into the large central canyon of the Wormsmokes. The lip of the canyon is guarded by a small outpost of elite troops 4 Legion Devils, probably the most complex CR3 monster ever, a Narzogon in its nightmare mount, and a 15-foot-tall, 2-ton monstrosity, a mountain troll. The outpost is built among the ruins of a crashed Lyrandar airship, and a couple of ballista bunkers are scattered about the area. The party is spotted by the guards long before the party sees them, so the Narzogon and his troops immediately form ranks. The Narzogon and its nightmare prove very hard to pin down thanks to the mount's at-will etherealness. It phases through the ground, while the mountain troll charges. Kikini activates her true seeing, and Laika draws Vanangan, the great sword she got from Karn. The PCs try to take up covered positions behind the crashed airship, while Nox, once more invisible, tries to get into a bunker behind the troll. He dumps his oil of Doloraus blow onto the ballista bolt and waits for an opportunity to shoot. The Legion Devils, in the meantime, move up to a place behind another hull section. These guys are pretty scary, being able to teleport to locations close to other Legion Devils is a move action. The Narzogon phases up out of the ground beside Kikini, fills the area with smoke, but misses his attacks. The nightmare goes ethereal once more. Nox tries to attack the mountain troll, but misses due to non-proficiency penalties, and wastes a very good opportunity. Laika runs up to the troll and uses death from above, but the beast smacks her with its great club for half her HP. Laika, being a natural magnet for devils, once again gets surrounded by teleporting Legion Devils, who begin wailing on her. Only 1 hits, though, despite their massive bonuses. Holden challenges the Narzogon to single combat, which telepathically accepts. Kikini points out the Narzogon's location, but Holden misses due to not seeing his target. Instead of rushing in to attack him, the Narzogon flies behind Linny and shoots Holden with its triple scorching ray. Leica uses Mithril Tornado to slash the Legion Devils, significantly damaging their collective HP, then tumbles out of the mass and the Troll's reach, after which the Cleric gets up to her to heal her with Cure Crit. Nox takes another shot at the Troll, this time with his crossbow, and finally gets in some decent damage. Kikini then blasts the Troll and the Legion Devils with a powerfully augmented energy missile, fire, failing to remember that the Legion Devils are immune to it. Although she deals damage to the Troll, the Legion Devils are unscathed. Linny then drops an Earth Reaver on the Legion Devils and the Troll, who make their collective saves but get blasted into oblivion by the flying rocks. After getting healed, Leica activates her Lesser Sybaris armor, sprouting glowing dragon mark wings, and flies up to the Troll once more, and uses Soaring Raptor Strike and Vonnegan's blood-feeding power. As she leaps out of the sunlight, she plunges the great sword into the Troll's chest, and the vicious weapon shreds the Troll with its extending spines. The Troll collapses. The Narzogon attacks Holden but misses again, and Holden smites the Devil with a Divine Surge, disintegrating it in a column of silver fire. Its rider dead, the Nightmare goes ethereal and flies off. As Leica turns her back on the Troll, however, it gets back up and whacks her again with its club. Nox finishes it off with a headshot. 2 tons of Troll hit the dirt, the sound of the impact reverberating off the canyon walls. As the PCs walk up to the edge of the cliff, the view sends shivers down their spine. A treacherous winding path, the last 2 hours of the trip, descends the cliff face below them, and crosses a long, narrow stone bridge to the other side. And there, at the end of the bridge, is the most impressive door any of them has ever seen. Day 51. The onrushing storm. The PCs get up at 6 a.m. and begin the treacherous 2-hour journey down the pass that descends the cliff face. They notice that the weather over the canyon hasn't changed. It has been cloudy since yesterday, and thunder periodically rumbles through the cloud cover. Although there is no wind and rain, the dark sky is foreboding. Linny notices that the bridge below is a chain suspension bridge held up by crackling electric rings at intervals. These look very similar to the air elemental rings used in airships. Their close proximity to each other causes a sort of resonance that is likely responsible for the bad weather. At about 8 a.m. they arrive at the foot of the bridge. They do the smart thing and tie themselves by the waist onto the handrail chains, and slowly begin the quarter-mile walk across the swaying bridge. About 200 feet from the other end, the 5-headed statue of Tiamat that looms over the bridge begins to speak. Who dares approach the fane of Tiamat? Priest Captain Holden Magreen of the Silver Flame. Leica states her rank and complete name as well. While the voice echoes throughout the canyon and clearly sounds like 5 different voices, the PCs make their will saves versus the ventriloquism. Leica is able to pinpoint the source of the voice in the Tiamat statue's blue dragon head. Linny asks if it's possible to shatter the dragon head. It certainly is, but given the scale of the statue, they're going to have to deal a lot of damage to it. For some reason, Holden's player was under the impression that the statue was only human-sized until here, only now does he realize that it's more like Mount Rushmore. The statue continues, "I do not know what your business here is. Leave an offering for Tiamat and depart from here, and I might spare you." Holden replies, "Well, moving toward the statue counts as departing from here, doesn't it?" He slings the maul over his shoulder and continues walking down the path. The others follow. Nox drinks a potion of invisibility. Almost immediately, the blue dragon Tirgarun, the guardian of the fane and father of Azar Kul, jumps out of the maw of the blue dragon head and dives, landing with a thunderous tremor on the ledge. QBGM. I am Tirgarun, the onrushing storm and father of Azar Kul. I shall not allow you to obstruct his plans. Dare you come against me? Kikini raises her inertial armor, while Linny casts Mass Shield of Faith. Leica activates her Sybaris armor, spreading her dragon mark wings, and takes to the air. Holden drinks a potion of fly and likewise moves closer to the dragon. Immediately the dragon flies off the path and takes a position 65 feet away from the bridge, to the left of the PCs. Only Linny and Leica succeed on their frightful presence saves, everyone else gets nailed. Tirgarun lights up Holden and Leica with his breath weapon. Both fail their saves and get blasted with 43 damage. Kikini once more attempts to blast Tirgarun, but she begins a long string of failures to breach SR. It would have been much better if she used electricity, since it gets a bonus to breaching resistance, but unfortunately the dragon is completely immune to it. Laika and Holden each drink potions of Enlarge Person and try to catch up with the dragon. Linny attempts in vain to blast Tirgarun with Sound Lance, but she likewise fails miserably to breach his spell resistance. Holden closes in, but before he even manages to get close enough to swing, Tirgarun does a sharp turn and buzzes Holden, who misses on his AOO. The dragon instead sets upon Kikini, goring her with his horn. He attempts to throw her off the bridge, but she makes her reflex save and escapes with a graze. Nox misses yet again, but due to his hide check and the dragon still can't spot him. Okay, I messed up, there was nowhere to hide. It really wouldn't have mattered much in the end because, well, read till the end. Kikini fires yet another energy ball which simply dissipates against the dragon's body. Linny likewise fails to get any more damage out of her second Sound Lance. Laika and Holden struggle to catch up with Tirgarun, but he's just too fast and his axe just too high. The dragon makes a wing over and comes straight back at Holden, goring him with his horn. Holden is able to make the reflex save to avoid the awesome blow, but he's completely unable to dent Tirgarun for now. Nox whiffs his shot yet again. Kikini keeps up her bombardment, but to no effect. Out of Sound Lances, Linny instead takes up her Wand of Ice Knife, the only spell she has that can actually hit the dragon, and fails to breach SR. Now within range, Holden smites Tirgarun with Divine Surge, scoring a hefty 56 damage. The dragon makes his massive damage save, but Laika circles and flanks him, dropping a soaring raptor strike on him from behind. For the first time, the dragon roars in pain. The angered dragon roars, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that." "What, slept with your wife?" snarls Holden. The dragon extends his wings and beats down hard, checking Laika and Holden with the wind, and opens up a savage attack. The bite and first claw hits Holden, while the second claw hits Laika. Lucky for her, the tail misses. Freaked out by the dragon's savagery, Nox messes up his shot. At this point Kikini stops trying to shoot and instead uses the Horn of Abathriox to use Chinook Fly on herself, and concentrates into Chinook Focus. Linny tries her Wand of Ice Knife once more, but the projectile fizzles ineffectually on the dragon's hide. Holden smites Tirgarun once more, smashing him in the face with Bone Crusher. The dragon's horn cracks down the middle. Laika follows up with a death from above, stabbing deep into the dragon's back. This time Tirgarun lets out an agonized wail. "That's what your wife said," says Holden. The furious dragon punches it, flying straight up to 90 feet above Laika and Holden, who both whiff their AOOs, then soaring across the bridge once more to a position about 95 feet away from the bridge. Nox calibrates his crossbow and uses the Pythagorean theorem to calculate the dragon's position. He takes a single step to close the distance a bit. And misses. Ho-hum. Kikini takes off, breaking away from Linny and Nox, while Linny tries her ice knife one more time. This time she rolls a natural 20 and breaches Tirgarun's SR, but fails to confirm her critical. The mighty shard of ice plunges into the dragon for an impressive 8 damage. Laika and Holden try their best to pursue the dragon, but don't even make it halfway. The dragon uses his wand of fireball and sears Linny. She makes her save, and then flies back to a position straight above the bridge, hovering above one of the lightning rings. The PCs don't realize his plan. He intends to dive onto the bridge, sending the chain bridge quivering like a rubber band, and fire off his maximized breath weapon. The two frontliners close in, but Nox composes himself and takes his shot. The confirmed critical hit plunges straight into Tirgarun's eye. He deals over 53 damage with his sneak, but the critical hit would have been enough to kill him at this point. Which is why it didn't matter if he was hidden or not. "You cannot stop, my son." Dying in mid-flight, Tirgarun's massive corpse crashes onto the air elemental ring. Draconic blood reacts with powerful magic, and a brilliant blue-white flash lights up the entire canyon. The impact sends the bridge swaying wildly, but Nox and Linny are able to hold on. Realizing the dragon had just died, the PCs begin rejoicing. Laika then ruins the mood by asking Holden, "So, sir, did you really sleep with the dragon's wife?" Linny's player complains that he's tired and would rather call it off, while Holden's player says that he'd like to see what the dragon's hoard was. Just then, Nox's player arrives, apparently held captive by a series of 6 statistics tests. We inform him of his character's accomplishment, to which he glumly shakes his head. He lights up at the mention of treasure, however, so he and Holden's player vote to push on. Linny's player gives in, and hands over control of Kikini and Nox to Nox's player. They investigate the blue dragon head's maw and find the alcoves in which the 4 other dragons had dwelt. They realize that the scents and furniture of the areas are obvious clues to what types of dragons had lived there, and come to the conclusion that these were indeed the nests of the slain dragons. They spot Ozyrandian's obsessive stacks of bones, Regerix's messy apartment where a small chair and bed still stand, Varanthian's intricately carved shrine to Tiamat, and Abathrix's sulphurous alcove, decorated with skulls mounted into the rock face, which had been glassed by fiery breath. Finally, they come to the end of the chamber, where they see an enormous treasure trove. The pile of gold is inviting, but 3 weapons call their attention: a giant hammer the size of a small tree, an enormous crossbow, and a bone-white, dragon shard-mounted staff covered in glyphs. The adamantine hammer shrinks to fit Holden's size as he touches it, and Linny identifies it as Kumhakarna's penance, the personal weapon of one of Zendrike's Titan lords who had repented of his deeds as the giant empire fell. A dragon who witnessed the dying Titan's repentance purified the weapon, and it now bears the inscription, "By my hand my own people fell, by my fist shall your people stand." Penance is a blessed weapon and as such breaches Dr/good, and also has the power to send a shockwave rippling through the ground. The crossbow is nowhere near as ancient, but is no less impressive. It's a Xanthus Gastrophates, a state-of-the-art crossbow designed by the gnomes of Zilargo as a special assassination weapon for members of the Trust. The weapon is actually large, but its compensation systems allow medium and small characters to use it without much problems, albeit the weapon needs to be calibrated every morning. It can also produce its own special ammunition and collapse into a compact, highly concealable but unusable form for storage. Linny's staff is a Quill of Orion, a staff that gives some skill bonuses and has a couple of per day utility spells, as well as Blast of Force and Thunder Lance, twice and once per day, respectively. As a relic of Orion, the staff can also be transformed into a minor schema of a divine spell or arcane spell, though activating it for arcane spells can fail. The PCs debate on what to do with the gold, but decide to leave it for now. They fly back down to the entrance. The players mess around a bit, not realizing the peril of the door. Nox fails to notice any traps and calls it clear, so they start saying, "We break the door for dynamic entry." They then start talking about the value of large stone doors, and in the end decide to just push it open. The whine of arcane energy building up fills the air around them, and the dragon heads in the doorframe let loose a massive blast of energy. Everyone fails their saves, and get whacked with a solid 45 damage. Needless to say, they spend more time healing after the trap than they do after the dragon. Nox finally disables the trap, and the party, now trap scared, enters. They mess around in the hallway for about 20 minutes as Nox pores over every nook and cranny trying to find a trap. They don't find any, and enter the foyer. 2 blue Abishai and their pet zombie wyverns greet them. Kikini throws Laika at one of the Abishai in its alcove, but misses. The shifter thuds against the wall, but gets up and faces the fiend. Nox readies a shot. He makes use of Deadeye Shot when there are no sniping spots, while the second Abishai flies up and towards the ceiling above the doorway. Holden enters and is immediately, well, in a manner of speaking, set upon by the 2 zombie wyverns. Eventually, Holden explodes one of the wyverns while the second is incinerated by Linny with her wand of Scorching Ray. It's the Abishai that are extremely annoying due to their DR and regeneration. The 2 Abishai deal some notable damage with their stings, if they connect, but for the most part they don't really threaten the PCs. Eventually, Linny casts a line weapon on Nox, snipes one and busts its chest open. Kikini, frustrated by the Abishai's numerous immunities and resistances, resorts to using sonic energy missiles, but it's not long before the 2 fiends regenerate the damage away. Nox finishes off the Abishai that attacks him. Laika beats one of them into submission, applies an Oil of Bless weapon, and then decapitates it,